Billions of claims, victims waiting for years. A fund accused of failing on its mandate, overpaying on inflated court orders, paralyzed by weak leadership. At the center of all of these, there is a suspended CEO who is claiming to be a victim of political and judicial conspiracies. This is us. So today we will be talking about the RAF. What's really going on there? But I think most importantly, who's actually paying the price? Because everybody has spoken about the RAF, the mess there are suspicions, there are investigations. The portfolio committee is on the RAF. Everybody's talking about the RAF. RAF is in and out of courts. And there are road accident victims. Who, by the way, 45% of these people happen to be pedestrians. And if they're pedestrians, I can bet that they're black. Can bet you that majority of them are male. They are fathers who are traversing the roads, going back and forth from their gigs to home and home likewise. And these are people that are subjected to 5 years, 6 years of waiting when the undesirable happens. So today we're going to be talking about the RAF. But what I want us to do is to see if we can talk a little bit about, summarize what the problems are. We have our own perception and an idea of what the problems are, based on what is out there in the courts. And we want to talk about systemic problems as well that are caused, whether wittingly or unwittingly, by the leadership in the RAF. But at the end of it all, I want us to talk about what is it that can be done to try and bring RAF back into the fold where it belongs, where it is a scheme or a fund that benefits victims, because that's the ultimate goal. I know that some people in the ministry are also watching this. And I know that there are colleagues at the RAF that are watching this. And over the years, every time when people speak about the RAF, it has always been bashing and bashing and bashing. And I can imagine how they feel, to work for an institution where you cannot be proud. Every time, especially those that are in communications, you are fighting fires every day because the brand has taken so much knock in the public eye. It is not my objective or my intention to try and save RAF today, because what it is going through, it has brought this to itself. But can it be saved by circumstances? Can it be saved by the process that is undertaken by government, the parliament at the moment? Is there hope for an ordinary victim who's out there? So I want us to go deep into some of these things. Let me welcome you and say, Mr. Gert Nel from Gert Nel Incorporated. Okay. Yeah, it sounds some big English for a black guy. So it's not.
But you manage it well. Thank you, Arvid.
Welcome, man. Welcome.
Thank you.
So look, I'm really a bit disturbed about the fact that the majority of road accident beneficiaries or claimants or victims are black people, and I think they're getting a raw deal. Period. And this is so our position as Transit Ringas. We are saying that the time that people are spending just to get the their claims settled is long. It is long, and I guess it is also as a result of the complexity of the matters that are brought to the Road Accident Fund. And we're going to talk about that. But just now, a few weeks ago, I saw you on Oli's ENCA, and you were defending something there. What was going on there? Tell me about that interview. What was that?
I think we actually asked for a right of reply to what Mr. Letswalo had said earlier in the year and what he keeps on repeating. Calling our firm, obviously we've been involved with Road Accident Fund matters for the past 24, 25 years.
Right.
And with that history, obviously we've built up a huge claimant base, and by implication, if there are payments made, obviously we would feature in the top 10 are plaintiff attorneys firms in the country, which is nothing untoward about that. It's simply because we've got a huge client base. And it was, I think the impression that Mr. Letswalo wanted to create was the fact that we receive money and then we steal the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because we charge a certain portion of the money that we receive from the Road Accident Fund as a fee. And according to him, he made up a sum, which to this day, I don't know where he got the figures from. So it's difficult to respond to what he's saying, because since the very first time he mentioned it, we haven't been privy to any of the information that he disclosed. So it's difficult, to react to something that's in the air. I mentioned on Crowley's show that I'm a lawyer. I work on facts. If somebody wants to confront me with that kind of information, they're welcome to show me the figures and we can discuss it and put it in perspective, because the amounts that we're talking about are hugely made up of the client's capital amounts, and including in that are the expenses that we help the claimant to support them to get to a point where they can finalize their matter. So there's a lot of moving parts in that system. So just to label us and the rest of the lawyers on that list as if we are doing something untoward, I think is opportunistic and drives the narrative that the Road Accident Fund had been doing even before Mr. Letswalo was the CEO of the Road Accident Fund. That was a narrative that was pushed by in the Road Accident Fund and the department when they wanted to promote the Road Accident Benefit Scheme bill, which I'm sure we'll discuss a bit later in the conversation.
So you're a lawyer. You want to be confronted by facts, or with facts, if you like. Is it a fact that you are claiming 25% from every claim?
No. Simply because that is not what the Contingency Fee Act stipulates. The 25% is a cap. It's not a fee. So the approach, and unfortunately Mr. Letswalo also holds the opinion that all attorneys charge 25% of whatever the capital amount that they receive, which is simply misplaced, because that's not what the Contingency Fee Act says. The Act requires me to still draw up a statement of account. It looks like a Checkers or a OK or a Woolies bill. For each item of work that you've done, you can charge a fee that is standardized in terms of the High Court Rule 70. So we're not allowed to charge a cent more if we can't prove that we've actually done the work. So just to piecemeal accuse attorneys or all attorneys that they're charging 25%, I think is also hugely misplaced.
No, I wanted that to be out because I think it's an important thing, which would lead me to us talking about some of the firms, the legal firms that have been found on the wrong side of the law. Gert, you can't deny the fact that there are lawyers that are just totsis. They just go out there. Their intention is to rob the victims, and they take people's monies. Right? We can't beat about the bush when it comes to that one. We we just hope, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to say, is or has your firm been found to be amongst any of those now, in the past, or any other time, or has there been any other claim to that effect?
Isaac, no. Simply, I think what you're referring to are those firms that has received double payments from the Road Accident Fund that were being investigated by the
Not only
SIU.
not only those,
And
but
others. We'll get to them, but
Okay.
we're not part of that 102, 103 firms that were investigated. And you're absolutely right. I mean, there are unfortunately bad apples in the packet, and I think the LPC is doing a very good job to address that. And if you look at the statistics of the percentage of lawyers in the RAF arena that are actually guilty of overreaching or whatever they do, it's a small percentage, in the bigger scheme of things. But that's being dealt with. I mean, there are filters in place to make sure that lawyers, stay within the boundaries of what the different acts that apply to the Road Accident Fund claims and contingency fees. Those are highly regulated. So it's a very important factor to take into account, that obviously we are bound to what we supposed to do in terms of the acts that are applicable to the act. And obviously, if you stray, then there will be consequences. And I'm sure that many of those lawyers have been struck off the roll or have been reprimanded for what they've done. But it is unfortunately a reality of our work. But you find that in any professional setup. You get doctors that do silly things. You get accountants. I mean, there are stories about people in other disciplines of professional businesses that do things that they're not supposed to do. I think just because the Road Accident Fund is such a hot topic at the moment, obviously it's being highlighted to a large extent. But I think all things considered, the lawyers, and especially the top lawyers that do this work, have been doing this for many years. And if there were any unlawful or unprofessional conduct on their part, they wouldn't have been, practicing for 24, 25 years or even longer. Then they would have been history by now. So I think the fact that these lawyers, even the ones that are on that top 10 list, are or have been practicing for so long, should put the viewers' minds at ease that there are actually people that are looking after the rights of their clients and doing their level best to make sure that they get their due diligence in terms of compensation at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think that's important because the you see, double or duplicate payments. It can be an administrative error to a large extent. But there's someone here who says that I got the total payout was 3 million rand, but I got 100,000 rand. There are people who suffered in the hands of lawyers, not because it was a double. Lawyers stole the bloody money. And I know that you said that the LPC is busy with things like those, but there are people who don't even know what to do. Because somebody, what do you say to somebody whose payment, he received payment 4 or 5 years ago and only realized, I've got a person here in this office block who only received 50,000 of a claim. In fact, that accident, even the parent died in that accident. So it was severe. But that guy got only 50,000 rand in the hands of lawyers.
Isaac, unfortunately, I mean, I can't sugarcoat this topic. It is what it is. I mean, it is unfortunate, and hopefully some of these claims can still be addressed, because there are obviously lawyers do have indemnity insurance, and if there's still time to attend to that, more often than not, there are ways in which to recover monies like that. But shows like this are important because the public don't know. What do you do if you confronted in that situation? And, the viewers must also realize there's also a duty on you to act immediately. If you receive a payment from a lawyer and you have any doubt about whether that was justifiable or not, you report the matter to the LPC. It's a simple process. The LPC then stands in your shoes and they manage this whole process on your behalf to the extent that there's a proper meeting between the different parties involved, and most of the times there's a resolution to the matter. But unfortunately, there are the unlucky ones that realize too late, that this has happened, and but that's why it's very important to make sure that the communication between you and the practitioner is alive, and that if there's anything in the communication that you don't understand or want to query, get a second opinion. Or the LPC's got offices all over the country, and I'm sure that the viewers, anybody in that position, if they have any doubts, just refer the matter to the LPC to deal with. The first thing they do is they address a letter to these lawyers, and the lawyers need to explain. And if they can't do it, then obviously, certain steps are taken. So, but yes, the key here is to act immediately. You can't wait until 3 years, for instance, have passed since you received the payment, and then you're making it difficult for yourself.
No, I think this is important because, and I know that with my viewers there's somebody who doesn't even know how the claim process works. Therefore, they don't know any amount that comes to them, they accept. So they don't know what to expect. There's somebody who doesn't even know that there's something called an LPC. They're hearing it for the first time now, right? But they've been involved in an accident before. They have received, or some of them are just about to receive. What are the checkpoints? What is it that they need to do to make sure that at least they keep track of, one, the process, two, the amount of money? What is it that a person, a victim, can do to just check, other than just trusting your lawyer, because your lawyer becomes the intermediary? Is there any other thing that they can do?
I think the most important decision that any person needs to make that is confronted with a road crash is to do your research if you can. If you're able to get to a library that's got access to the internet, make sure that the lawyers you engage are reputable. My concern is, unfortunately, that people are confronted by characters in hospitals, or the information is shared from the police or other people involved in this chain of events that gather the information on behalf of these victims, and unfortunately they go to a lawyer that the victim might not know or never meet. And it's important that the viewers know that the relationship between you and your lawyer is a personal relationship. And because we're talking about personal injury law, this thing needs to be driven 50-50 by the client must be just involved as the lawyer in his claim. So make sure there's enough communication there. Make sure that you get a response within a reasonable time. And if you don't, then there is the Legal Practice Council. Sometimes what happens is a person might change address, or a cell phone might get stolen, and the communication or chain of communication is broken. And the first thing that the client thinks is the attorney is doing something funny, and all the while it's just information sharing at the end of the day. So the important thing is to build a proper relationship with your practitioner, to make sure, because that practitioner is there to ensure that whatever the format of that settlement will be at the end of the day, be it your last paycheck or just a financial safety net, having regard to your personal circumstances, you must make sure that this guy is on your side and that you feel comfortable with the way that he deals with your matter. I mean, you're in control of that instruction, and I think that's where many people miss the point. They think that they're working for the lawyer or they're doing them a favor. It's the other way around. You must make sure, because you're paying for the services at the end of the day, and any one of us who wants your car serviced or wants to go to the doctor, wants to get proper service, you want to get proper advice. So make sure that you get that while you have the privilege of dealing with an attorney on a basis that he finances this matter on your behalf. So you phone, you call, you write letters, you correspond. Make sure that there's enough interaction between yourself and that lawyer, not to have a situation where a year or two passes without you knowing anything about what's going on your matter, because that's usually, where things go sideways. So you want to prevent that. So I would say to the viewers, the important thing here is to be involved in your own matter. If you've got peace of mind that your lawyer is the best that you could be able to find, then surely you will rest assured that they know what they're doing and that they'll manage your affairs, because unfortunately, as you mentioned before, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of time, 3-6 months that passes on a particular matter before something happens, either at the fund or at court. So it's not worthwhile to send a letter, for instance, every month to a client, because you don't want to rake up those costs unnecessarily.
Yes.
If something changes on the file, then obviously it would be prudent to communicate that with your client and any interaction that you have. So I think that is the important thing. I think too many people are being led astray by intermediaries before they get to a proper lawyer. So people must make sure that the person that consults you are actually a lawyer. Make sure that he's got a practice number and that he's got the proper qualifications to do that actual consultation with you at the end of the day.
Hold it right there. I think it's at this stage where I would want to say to the viewers out there that the fact that you don't pay for this process right at the beginning does not make you less of a person. Whatever, any lawyer who takes up your matter, you are paying for that service, even if the payment is delayed. You are going to pay for every cent, for every call that lawyer has made, for every letter he has written. You're going to pay for it, right? But I think this discussion that then lends us into something very, very important. It lends us into these guys called toutas. These are the guys that are in the hospitals. Immediately when you get an accident, there's somebody there who's just waiting for you to open your eyes, and they will tell you that they will help you. These are people that are collaborating with the police, some unscrupulous officers at the police station who will tell this guy that there has just been an accident, that all of a sudden there's somebody who knows that you are in an accident and you don't know anything. You've not reported this matter to anybody, but somebody comes to you and they tell you that you've been in an accident somewhere else. These are toutas. They are targeting you. Be mindful of who these people are. They are all over the hospitals, and be careful of them, because these people most of them are not lawyers. They are just representing lawyers, and that's the reason why so much money is charged for you, because there's somebody here in between who must get also money for the services that they are rendering. You gotta have to be very careful. At this stage, those who are on live, tap the screen, share this live. You know how this thing. Please do that. Tap the screen and give us the. Make sure that the message goes viral if anything. But Gert, I want to talk about something that I think all South Africans are questioning and asking themselves, what is really happening at the Road Accident Fund? Is the CEO suspended or he's on a special leave? What is going on there?
I think, Isaac, at last count, he's been suspended. With his full pay and all the privileges, including his security detail. That's according to papers that were filed by the board. He was supposed to have an urgent application heard this past Tuesday, which was now postponed until next week, Tuesday. So I don't unnecessarily want to deal with matters of fact, because I think all South Africans would be interested to see what the outcome of this whole ordeal is at the end of the day. So I think everybody should be given a fair chance to defend or to respond to certain allegations. So I think people are going to be fixed to the social media on Tuesday to see how this thing played out.
I'm laughing because I can sense, yeah, Isaac. I want to be, I want to remain in a straight and narrow. No, fair, because we called to here today to really focus a lot more on what needs to be done. I just wanted to build that into all of these things before we get to that, because we have opinions, Gert, and I'm going to share our opinions as Transit Ringas, that we have been listening in Parliament. We've gone through court papers, and I don't care, even if you have no opinion on what I'm going to say, it's okay. Stay there. It's not your issue, it's mine. That the part of the mess that we find in the road accident fund today is as a result of leadership. That's our opinion. It is our opinion that the road accident fund has been run like a spaza shop. It's our opinion. It is our opinion that there are decisions that were made that were irrational and irregular in the road accident fund. And as a result of that, majority of road accident victims have suffered either on time, mainly on time. There are people who could have been saved by the monies that could have been paid by the road accident fund, but some of them died before they even received that.
Yeah.
It is our opinion that the road accident fund has failed the road accident victims, and we have our own reasons, and some of these reasons we're putting in front of you. We're saying that if all of your claims or majority of the payments that you make, the payouts you make, you are instructed by a court of law to pay that out. It means, and not only that you are instructed, but you also fail to go to court to go and defend that. It means that the amount of money that is eventually paid out, one, it is inflated. It could have been avoided, right? So we are saying that if people go around, and especially the CEO, and we've given him the opportunity as well, we have given the road accident fund guys who are here, we've given them, we have given an opportunity for them to come and sit on this chair and address some of these issues. They squandered that opportunity. In fact, as a matter of fact, the road accident fund was one of the very first institutions that we introduced ourselves to. They should have known that we're going to talk about these things because we know of the people that are involved. So I'm saying the mess that is at the road accident fund, which I know that the SIU is currently investigating, Parliament is on it. I am aware that the Parliament is on it. Would you agree, at least with a sentiment that says that the road accident victims are negatively affected? Would you agree with that sentiment, at least, if nothing else?
Yeah. Most definitely.
Would you also then agree that I've been particularly worried about the matters that have been in and out of court, because the RAF has tried so many things. They've tried systems, opinions, and a lot of those things have not been accepted. And all of these things have affected our people negatively. Can we have a discussion a little bit about this? Or maybe let me ask you a direct question. What do you think would be one of the reasons why you would agree with me that the victims have been negatively affected.
Yeah. Isaac, I think the viewers must appreciate the reason why the Road Accident Fund was brought into being. If you look at the mandate in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act, it's simply to provide the widest possible cover to all road crash victims. So if you have that as a point of departure, and you're running the Road Accident Fund according to the Road Accident Fund Act. Now, the Road Accident Fund is essentially a creature of statute, which means everything it does is enshrined, is cast in stone within the four corners of what is written in that act. Now, the viewers must also appreciate that this act has been challenged and tempered in any conceivable court in the country, up to the apex court of our country. Changes have been implemented to address, for instance, foreigner claims. I see there's still arguments being made about foreigners receiving exorbitant. That's been changed in 2008 already. That's been addressed. So the Road Accident Fund Act has been changed in accordance with what the requirements, for instance, foreigner claims at that particular point in time in terms of the value of the claims were concerned. So what we find subject to the current, if suspended CEOs rule, is what they did is they took the Road Accident Fund Act. If we, for a moment, appreciate that for me to lodge a claim with the Road Accident Fund, in terms of the act, I only need to have an affidavit to explain how the accident happened, which you can accept because I need to tell them what happened. And the second thing is because it's a personal injury claim, I can only claim for my injuries that I've suffered. I need to submit what we call a statutory medical report. So those are two simple requirements to allow people, in terms of the Act, in terms of Section 19, victims can do their own claims, or they can opt to make use of a lawyer. They've got that decision, either or. They can do it themselves, or they can instruct a lawyer to do it on their behalf.
Yeah.
What the Road Accident Fund then did is they had regard to the Act and they decided, no, let's require 20 additional items to these two to be able to engage the Road Accident Fund and lodge a claim, or just even for the claim to be registered. Now, most of those additional documentation are expensive medico-legal reports, or simply, if you just use one example, an RAF4 report in which this victim must engage a doctor that can look into the future and tell him whether or not he's going to suffer any further consequences or personal damage. And then he needs to have that report available to submit his claim. If he doesn't, then he doesn't comply in terms of this board notice that was in 2020, it was published. So what we essentially confronted with, you asked me earlier on, how do the viewers know how to lodge a claim? That's a very interesting question, because you've got the Act that says a medical report and an affidavit, or you've got this board notice which has been found illegal in more than one court. It's not my opinion. It's the opinion of the courts that it's illegal. And the fund to this day, as we are sitting here, they're still implementing this unlawful board notice to exclude victims from gaining access to benefits. To give you an example, on the 2023-24 annual report, they almost boastfully submit that they've managed to reduce the amount of claims that are registered or considered to 3% of the matters that are lodged with the Road Accident Fund. So if you want to use that to pat yourself on the back,
that's exclusionary.
To show that you've managed to actually exactly exclude the majority of victims that would have otherwise been able to claim from the Road Accident Fund. So that is one part of this. And then obviously they also introduced, again, an unlawful accounting standard, and overnight relabeled themselves as a social benefit scheme, which they aren't. It's not my opinion. There are courts that confirm that the Road Accident Fund, by its nature, is not a social benefit scheme. It's social insurance. but they implementing or they relabeled themselves as a social benefit scheme, which is quite interesting if you tap into the details of that. By implication, the Road Accident Fund then allows themselves the opportunity to manipulate the contingent liability. For instance, in terms of the actual accounting standard that the Auditor General prescribes, they determine the contingent liability on every single accident that happens based upon a future event that might happen when the claim is lodged, as opposed to the amount of claims that are being registered and offers that are being made. Now, we know only 3% of matters are being lodged or registered at the Road Accident Fund, and I'm sure we'll get into the litigation part. Most of these claims aren't settled based upon offers that the Road Accident Fund made, but subject to negotiations, a offer a day or two before trial, or even a year before, depending on the circumstances. And then obviously you have to ventilate the matters, and then it's settled, and then it goes to court. So it's not a situation where you lodge a claim and within 120 days, as the Act requires, you get an offer. That never happens. The Road Accident Fund does not make offers within 120 days. And again, the Road Accident Fund Act is actually protects the victim and the fund equally, to the extent that the first portion of the claim after you've lodged it is to the benefit of the Road Accident Fund, to allow them to do a proper analysis, investigation, and then they're supposed to do or make an offer within 120 days. And if they're not, then the Act tilts in the favor of the victim, saying, okay, fine, the fund had their opportunity now you need to do what you need to do to get justice. So then we obviously compelled to summons the Road Accident Fund.
Gert, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about an old man who's in the Eastern Cape somewhere in the villages there, who's listening to this big English, right? Can Isaac, who's just a layman, who's never been to school, honestly, as you're sitting here, honestly, given your experience of traversing that universe of the Road Accident Fund, can ordinary black, uneducated South African make it a successful claim and get a fair pay out of the Road Accident Fund without getting the expertise of a Gert-like guy?
No. Maybe subject to the Road Accident Fund Act, but not in terms of the board notice, which they hold in front of these victims as a guardrail to prevent them from claiming from the fund. Isaac, there's no way. It's a challenge for us as lawyers to meet the requirements of the board notice.
But hold it right there. If we are saying that an ordinary South African will not be able to, one, go through the process, or if they do, get a fair compensation at the end of the claim, is the number that we're talking about of the current road accident claims that are being paid as we speak, is that number representative, accurately representative of the true victims out there, according to you?
No.
Guys, what are we doing here?
I'm telling you what we did in one of our parliamentary meetings with SCOPA. I submitted a copy of the claim form that forms the backbone of this board notice to the MPs. And one of the MPs put it to one of the RAF members or the minister, and asked her or told her that he would have difficulty to comply with this. How do they expect the public to be able to engage the Road Accident Fund if this is the requirement, albeit unlawful? And a question was posed to the suspended Mr. Letswalo in Parliament. What are the statistics of people claiming directly as in relation to settlements? And he said he didn't know. So that to me tells me that, one, that's not a priority. Their bottom line is to ensure that they can convince government that their contingent liability remains limited to 3% of the actual value of what it should be. So if we read between the lines, what is happening here is the viewers must be mindful of the fact that the Road Accident Fund Act allows me or a plaintiff to lodge my claim via registered post. So now I lodge my claim according to the Road Accident Fund Act, fully compliant. I submit it to the Road Accident Fund via registered post. The Road Accident Fund receives it, puts it in an envelope after they've had a look and seen that we didn't comply with the board notice, and they send it back to the plaintiff or to the lawyer, thinking that that liability has been dealt with now. But I've got a postage stamp showing that I've lodged that claim.
Right.
So that claim is in. I don't care what they do with it afterwards. The Act requires them, in terms of Section 24(5), to investigate that claim within the first 60 days to make sure that it complies with the Act. And if it doesn't, they have the opportunity to reject the claim. So essentially what they are doing is, one, they are denying themselves a remedy in terms of this Act to attend to this matter. And even worse, you can imagine how many fraudulent claims find their way into the fund because nobody's looking at this.
Yeah.
There's nobody actually looking at these claims. So, and unfortunately, as we've discussed earlier on, there are characters out there that do things that they're not supposed to do. And especially now that they know that the Road Accident Fund is doing this, it's so much easier to do this. And nobody seems to understand what is actually happening at the fund at the moment. So the suspended CEO created this parallel system to the actual Act, outside of the Act, based upon his board notice. So these phantom claims that are lodged but returned to plaintiffs are in, for all intents and purposes.
Yes.
I can continue after 120 days if the fund doesn't do what I summons.
Yeah.
So the viewers must have regard. I have it delivered, served by the sheriff on the fund. So they can't say we never received it.
Right.
So a second time it's delivered to them by a sheriff. They still don't do anything. So then I go through the process of applying for a trial date because the fund doesn't have any record on this. So for the fund to say that they proactively make offers to settle matters within 120 days is a fallacy, because they don't even know how many of these claims are floating around, so these phantom claims. But what happens then is those matters obviously are set down on default judgment because the fund is none the wiser, or they ignore the summons. They just throw it in a bin. So the matter is set down on default judgment. I get my order. I have to require in my court order that the fund is compelled to register that claim. So the courts are now doing the registering of claims. So the Road Accident Fund are at the point that they're expecting the courts now to do this duty on their behalf. So I've got a court order instructing the Road Accident Fund to now, after 2 years, register this claim. So now I submit my court order to the Road Accident Fund for payment. And they said, but we don't have record of this claim. We're not going to pay you. So
This is upsetting.
I saw on the papers that were served yesterday by the acting CEO of the Road Accident Fund that they're trying to convince the courts that they are doing everything that they can to settle matters before they need to go to court. They don't even know how many of these matters are on the system. They're lucky enough to know about the historical matters that be prior to the board notice that are on the rolls, that they can manage. But what about the other thousands of matters that they don't know about? And the fact of the matter is, you know, it's inconceivable to think that after 2-3 years, the matter gets back to the Road Accident Fund in form of a judgment that has been ventilated in court, and the Road Accident Fund puts up their hands, and what do they say? Resubmit your claim according to the board notice. I've already filed it and lodged it in terms of the Act. I've got a court order ordering the Road Accident Fund to pay me because I've done what I've supposed to do, and the Road Accident Fund pick up their hands and say, we don't recognize your claim. So I truly hope that somebody that's listening to this has the authority even if it's the SIU, because I think the SIU is only unearthing the tip of the iceberg. If they really dig into what's actually happening at the Road Accident Fund, subject to this illegal board notice, I think government, the Auditor General, is going to go off their minds, because how are they ever going to determine what their financial liability is going forward? Now we hear that the minister or the deputy minister wants to reintroduce legislation that has been rejected by Parliament a few years ago. The whole basis of implementing a new act, or
but maybe hold on there. We'll come back to that. We'll pick up on that point. I just want to speak to the viewers out there and say, please hear me out. Never try, unless you are an expert in this field, never try to put up a claim with RAF on your own. It's my advice to you. Don't try that. You know these things where they say, don't try this at home? This is one of them. Never try something like that. It's a trap. You would lose out on what you are due to receive, or that what you're supposed to receive. But you could fall into a serious legal trap along the way, where you are now supposed to submit experts and medical reports and opinions and stuff that you don't have a clue. Do not listen to the criminals that are saying you should do things outside the boundaries of the Road Accident Fund Act. That's my advice to you at this point. This excitement about what the CEO said, or the suspended CEO said, and the board notice, that's the reason why the number of people who eventually claimed with the Road Accident Fund, that number shrinked. That shrinkage was by design. And I said it last time, and I'm saying it now. It was by design. And if you're not careful, you'd be excluded, because all of these requirements actually are pushing you out of the system. We are using the roads every day. And if something happens to you and I, we deserve, in terms of the existing laws, we are supposed to be compensated by the Road Accident Fund. All of these other things that these guys are talking about when they're happy or drunk, we are not going to be listening to those type of things. So what are the rules, the laws say today? Is there an opportunity for us to bring up? Here's the minister now trying to bring back what was rejected by Parliament. What was that? Let's pick up on that. What was that the minister that was rejected? What was the proposition at the time? What was the intention of that piece of legislation? And why is the minister feeling like it's important to bring it back now?
Primarily, Isaac, the idea, there were 2 or 3 things that the benefit scheme catered for. One, that victims should be able to claim themselves. In that period where the benefit scheme, since about 2012 to about 2018, the Road Accident Fund actually promoted self-lodgement at provincial hospital. They had people there that invited the public to come to them and lodge their claims themselves. And what we found through our investigations, that thousands of those claims prescribed in the hands of the Road Accident Fund, and they're probably still in the basement of the Road Accident Fund. And people out there are waiting for, their compensation, all the while those matters are prescribed in the hands of the fund. To such an extent that the Road Accident Fund actually at some point started to summons themselves to try and interrupt prescription, until the DA actually took a stance and said, listen, we're going to report the CEO if you don't stop this, because this is not how it's supposed. You can't take an instruction to summons yourself. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Did they do that?
They did that. And it was subsequently stopped after the DA, and I'm sorry to bring in political parties here, but they were the ones stepping up to the plate. So that was the one aspect. And what we're seeing now is an example, exactly this example, is that the narrative was created that because lawyers steal their clients' money, I hear people talking about a cotton industry that's been created at the Road Accident Fund. and that lawyers are making a lot of money and they're stealing money and whatnot. So they're the boogeyman, they should be excluded. So that was the idea behind the benefit scheme. That's the one part. And I mean, that obviously didn't work because the fund at that point wasn't able to cope with the amount of claims and they just left them to prescribe. The second thing was that they would make it no fault. In other words, any person would have been able to claim. Having regard to fraudulent claims, you can imagine people falling from ladders or willingly stepping in front of a car and still be able to claim. Or you can drive as drunk as a fly into a bus of Swiss nationals and you could still claim money while you're in jail. You might be in jail, but you'll still be able to claim from this benefit scheme.
Sure.
Then obviously once they started to do the math concerning what this whole process is going to cost them, that's what I referred to earlier on. Good luck to the Auditor General and Treasury to try and determine at this point what the road accident fund's contingent liability is, because they don't know, because you've got parallel systems running next to each other. So except if lawyers are given a grace period in which they can come back to the road accident fund and relodge those claims and get them registered, then there can be some grip on what's going on here. The alternative is that these matters are just going to keep on piling back to the fund in the form of default judgments. Because again, and unfortunately, in contrary to what the acting CEO thinks, is they don't have a clue how many of these matters are out there, and they can't even make offers because they don't have any records of these matters. So the argument that the fund is proactively attending to matters is a fallacy. So when Treasury got involved in the benefit scheme and they actually did the math on what the saving was, it was a mere 20% saving on the current system. And when they further realized that it would require wholesale bailout of the road accident fund's current liability before you can move on to a no-fault system, they pulled the plug. They said they're not going to do this, and Parliament subsequently also said, no, this is for the time. And I think the most important thing that they also considered is that the whole framework of the benefit scheme bill was based upon NHI being in place, because it would have been a system in which everybody that was involved in an accident would have been able to go to hospitals, private hospitals, because there would have been a tariff that still hasn't been standardized yet. To this day, even since the beginning of the benefit scheme bill argument, there were talks that there would be a standard for medical expenses, and that never happened. And so obviously those things need to be in place first. So I think it would be counterproductive to try and reinvent the wheel. Again, the current Road Accident Fund Act is simply the best act that you could find, because it's been challenged and it's been tapered, subject to court rulings and changes in the legal framework.
But Colin says that you like it because it benefits you, and top white legal firms are benefiting from this. Is it benefiting you, my friend? You can speak to me.
Well, if government creates a demand by not ensuring safer travels for our pedestrians, for our passengers, it's like with anything. There's divorce lawyers because there's a demand. There are medical negligence practitioners because there's a demand being created. In essence, the Road Accident Fund Act, the best thing that they could do is to address road safety, and to invest more money towards road safety, because that in itself will eventually imply that the Road Accident Fund would be less liable to pay victims because there would be lesser accidents. But we know, unfortunately, there's no real appetite to address road safety, so it's just easier to try and reinvent the wheel, go through a whole legislative process to reintroduce an act that's already been rejected by Parliament for a specific reason. Now we're going to go through that exercise again, whilst a simple amendment to the current Road Accident Fund Act Yeah, obviously lawyers would always be, but wouldn't you like to be represented by a lawyer that knows what general damages is? I heard the other day that the suspended CEO to this day, after 7 years, doesn't know what general damages are. And know how to determine your future loss of earnings or earning capacity. Would you be able to do that? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So, yes, you're going to pay for a professional service, but it's the same as if you had your car serviced at a proper garage or had an examination at least a registered doctor. So we pay for the service, and you get a good settlement in return for that. So whilst fault, and I think that's I think the one ace that the department is trying to play is to get lawyers out of the system, is to introduce no fault, because that would imply that this confrontational system would be out.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are other challenges that would always require, because any person, even subject to the benefit scheme bill, would have the right to go to a court or a alternative tribunal to have his matter heard, exactly the same as now. Lawyers, and that's the unfortunate reality that
Sure.
the suspended Mr. Letswalu and everybody else that's involved in this has to come to terms with, is that lawyers will always be part of the system.
Now, to my viewers there and passengers, and so in Parliament, in boardrooms, people are talking about a scheme. They are preparing for you to die. They are saying, in case you do, because all the numbers are actually showing that a lot of people are dying on our roads, right? Maybe it is time for you to remember that we had spoken about the role that you play to preserve your life, because you've got a role to play to make sure that you don't fall into the same trap. You don't become part of the statistic yourself. Hang 10. Remember, we spoke about our app. Our app is going to do exactly that. For you to be able to report reckless driving in transit so that you can prevent the actual accident. We should not be discussing how much you get paid after dying or getting injured. We must say, how do we save your life? Now, I'm bringing this on because I know that this road accident fund issue has been it's very complex to me. You can imagine how I'm feeling sitting here, sitting in front of this guy, right? And he's going on about some English, right? And you and I, all we know is we want is a form when I'm involved in an accident, go into the road accident fund and say that my leg is broken. As to whether I know that this leg will not take me for the next 10 years, I can't know that. You know? So, Gert, is there hope? Is there a role? Because the Department of Transport, Parliament, everyone is busy around the road accident fund. Is there hope that there can be calmness and quietness where road accident victims can just be taken care of without these complications? And I personally, and I know that others are going to accuse me that lawyers are paying me, and I don't know. I've a colleague in this office who's lost money because of not knowing. Because the road accident fund process is very complicated. Is there hope? What is it that Parliament should do? Because SCOPA is now, 80% of SCOPA's time is now with road accident fund. SIU is on the road accident fund. It means that there's a rat that is stinking at the road accident fund. We don't know what that is as yet until the investigations are completed and the results are out. But all I know as I'm sitting here, as a layman, as a South African, is that there's a lot of crap that's going on in the road accident fund, and people are being excluded, the payments are delayed, and people are suffering, and those people are black, and that is my crime. That is my cry. Is there something that we can do to help these very, very poor people? A pedestrian, a man who's walking at 12 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, not drunk, is a breadwinner. And when that person is taken away from that family is in devastation. Is there hope? What should be done?
Isaac, I just want to comment on this example you've given, just to give the viewers the opportunity when the benefit scheme bill does surface again, because you mentioned earlier that Mr. Letswalo and of late everybody that's interested are mentioning the fact that we are opposed to change because it's going to influence the way that we do business. But if we consider one of the other aspects of the benefit scheme bill is a structured benefit. In other words, if this person that's been killed late at night and you've got a wife and children, in terms of the Road Accident Fund Act, the damages that you received is indemnity insurance. In other words, you can claim as much as you can within the four corners of the Act, which allows you, they look at your employment, they do a actuarial calculation, and they determine what it is. Subject to the benefit scheme bill, you would be placed in a bracket in terms of earnings, not necessarily what you would have earned, but they would be able to decide what that bracket is. Because again, you must have regard to the fact that there's no lawyers in that system. So you're going to be subjected to a computer that's going to decide what your earnings would have been, and they would then kick out this annual payment. While let's say, for instance, that you just injured in this accident. So let's say, for instance, after 6 months, because of your injuries, you die. Then that benefit stops. And in other words, your wife and children doesn't have any means of support out of this claim. So the benefit scheme is exactly that. It limits you to the time that you are able to claim. So it's as opposed to the Road Accident Fund Act, where you get a lump sum payment that you can invest or you can apply in order to make sure that you've got future benefits or a financial safety net. So there's a huge difference between the two. And if lawyers were not involved in the process of submitting opposing comments to the benefit scheme bill, it would have been passed by Parliament years ago, and this would have been our reality. The Road Accident Fund can barely cope with double payments to 103 law firms. How are they going to be able to cope with thousands of annuity payments? What do you think what chaos is that going to create? And all sorts of other, details concerning the benefit scheme bill. But to get to your question,
but don't get there first. Don't get there first. I want to park here and double click on something on road safety. And this is a message directly to the Minister of Transport, to say, dear Minister, despite our commitments as a country to the United Nations, and the commitments that we will have the road accidents and injuries on our roads, we said that we'll have that by 2030. The truth is that the numbers are going up. The number of people that are dying on our roads is just increasing. This then means that the Department of Transport is losing the battle on road safety. That's what it means. You are losing the battle on road safety. Parliament, instead of looking at many other things, and I'm not saying you should not, I'm just saying that there's a focus where people are losing their lives. They're losing their lives on the roads because of potholes, unroadworthy vehicles. And corruption is at the heart of it, because even the licenses that people have today, somebody can get a license at Pick and Pay, meeting somebody there and get their license. That's what you have subjected us to. You subject us to a situation where death is imminent, in fact is inherent. because there is no system. And this is very important for you guys to note, that it has been found, despite the fact that you are losing the battle on road safety, you also don't have capacity to man our roads. The CSIR found something very interesting. The CSIR found that where there's a speed camera, there'll never be an accident. When there's a roadblock ahead of you, there'll never be an accident. What does that mean? It means that motorists only modify their behavior only if and when they know that they're being monitored. So if you are not available, if you are not on the road, if you are corrupt and still giving people fake licenses and learners licenses, you know that you're going to subject us to this issue. I wanted to bring that point across because it becomes too big an issue. That Parliament, in whatever that you're doing there every day, please note that the target cannot be the amount of money that I get when I die. Can it be how you save my life? Can it be that? Is that too much to ask just to save a life? I want you to ponder over that because I think it's an important thing. I stopped you when you wanted to say something very important.
Short-term solutions, Isaac, definitely there are. Within the structures of the Road Accident Fund as it is, I often talk about a settlement hub. When I worked at the Road Accident Fund in the 90s, we had clusters of claims handlers dealing with matters on a daily basis, to the extent that if you received a summons in your department, you were called to your manager's office to go and explain what went wrong on that matter. Why didn't you make or manage to make an offer within 120 days? That's how effective it was still then the MMF, and soon after it became the RAF. So that is how it can work. It's not a pipe dream. It has been done before. There is a model there. In my view, if the Road Accident Fund can go back to that, because we must accept essentially the Road Accident Fund, because of the confrontational system having faults still part of the process, the fund needs to operate like a legal firm. So they need to employ people that can go toe-to-toe with lawyers like myself, that can defend the Road Accident Fund to the full extent that it should. That's the way that we did it. We were expected, after a matter was registered at the Road Accident Fund, the matter was immediately given to claims handlers to assess, and offers were made. And hence I'm saying the litigation at that particular point in time were minimal, because all these matters, and we all had mandates. We could settle within a certain quantum value of a claim. We could settle those matters without having to go to court.
And time.
And time. So time and the value of the claim, essentially. So in my view, an immediate change to address even the current question concerning mandatory mediation that's been implemented now. And I heard the suspended CEO making the remark last week in Parliament that my firm filed an application to oppose this because we're against change.
He speaks about your firm all the time. Why is that? Are you friends? Are you fighting for a wife or something?
You would think that, but no. It's I think it's just came to a point that all of these matters that we've been talking about today were under wraps. Nobody actually voiced, these concerns. And when we started to do this, then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. And then obviously our firm was the flavor of the day. And it seems to be staying there, for as long as Mr. Letswalo is allowed to have a voice in this matter. But the long and the short of it is there is short-term solutions that the Road Accident Fund can implement, even to address the Judge President's concern about the clogged court rolls, removing those matters, bringing it back into the offices of the Road Accident Fund and calling the lawyers to come and settle these matters over a desk. It can be done. There's no reason why they're not. I got the impression through some of these interviews that the suspended CEO had, that he's of the view that once you've summoned them, for the audacity that you embarrass them by doing that. They will not attend to that matter until such time that it's been set down for trial. But we all know that there was an executive decision earlier on, and even before Mr. Letswalo was the CEO of the Road Accident Fund, a decision was made not to make offers if there's not a trial date allocated on a particular matter. So you can see where this has been going. And now all of a sudden, we secured trial dates for our clients. Unfortunately, it's far into the future. And now we stand the risk of losing those dates. So essentially, the only leverage that we as practitioners had to champion our clients' cause as the date. And now we're losing it. And we'll see how this mandatory mediation works out. I saw the papers of the acting CEO yesterday. He's of the impression that they've got enough, they've got about 3,000 employees within the four corners of the Road Accident Fund's walls. I'm not sure how many of those are legally trained or would be able to stand up to professional lawyers in a mediation. I think it's just going to amount to lip service. And at the end of the day, those people still need to be paid. The mediators needs to be paid. So, the additional costs that this mandatory mediation is going to involve in the Road Accident Fund system, I think is going to be far worse than just digging down and employing a lot of. I actually heard the suspended CEO telling an interviewer, recently that he was at the verge of appointing 1,000 legally trained minds to assist in settling these matters. That was just before COVID, but they realized that these people wouldn't be able to have right of appearance in court, so they forego that idea. But ironically, on his own account, 99% of these matters are settled before it goes to court. So those people would never have been required to go to court. So just employ 1,000 more, lawyers or people that's got at least 5 years or more experience. I'm sure that the cost saving on default judgments and not having to pay a mediator would be far less than just creating jobs for lawyers out there. Create jobs for these people. There are a lot of skilled lawyers out there that would be fit this mold perfectly and address this. But there needs to be a sincere political will to turn around the Road Accident Fund, not to reinvent the wheel. The benefit scheme bill is going to go the same route as it did with the previous exercise. Rather focus on amending the current act. I agree, there needs to be change, but then it needs to be in the benefit or to the benefit of the victim. And, unfortunately, if, the sooner the powers that be realize if it's to the benefit of the victims, obviously lawyers would follow suit, because we need to attend to these people, because as we've explained, you wouldn't be able to determine whether or not an offer coming from the Road Accident Fund is a good offer or not. When I was working at the fund, we were confronted with a situation where people would lodge claims on their own behalf, with amputations, and they claim 20 or 80,000 rand. And they didn't know what the value is, because how would they know what the true value is?
How do you know that?
And how do you determine what the loss of earnings or your earning capacity is? So it is a reality, but there are guardrails in terms of the Road Accident Fund and practitioners being involved, whether it's inside of the Road Accident Fund or outside. Obviously, there needs to be a median that can accommodate both parties. And I think the sooner we take hands and have proper discussions on solutions, I think we can address this headache. Whatever's happening now at the executive level of the Road Accident Fund, that's of no concern to the victims. We need to attend to their interests. Whatever happens with this circus that's going on, it will resolve itself, and hopefully then there would be a opportunity to get stakeholders like myself involved in proper discussions and sharing ideas. We've got good ideas. I think, just grappling at the benefit scheme bill as if it's this golden, or silver bullet that's going to address the fund, it's simply not going to be that. That is not the answer. The answer is engagement. We need to discuss, and as stakeholders and the department and the fund sit around a table and come to terms with reality of what our clients and the victims' plight is, and how do we address that at the end of the day.
We're gonna close it at that, and maybe I would just say that to the board of the Road Accident Fund, you've been found wanting. Some of the things that have happened in the Road Accident Fund shouldn't have happened, and we have reason to believe that maybe an opportunity has presented itself for you guys to rise to the occasion, because you can. We believe that you can, and an opportunity has presented itself. Keep the CEO in suspension. Keep him there, so that you can really get to the bottom of what's going on there. We are interested, as Transit Ringas, we are interested in what's going on in the Road Accident Fund. Sadly, even your employees, they have felt that they're working in a very toxic environment. People can't move. People are afraid to share their opinions. Then they are afraid to. We've invited some of them here, but they could not even come through because they were afraid that they could say something that's wrong from what the CEO has been saying. There's a problem at the Road Accident Fund. I think it's time that you also look at the morale of the staff there. The morale of the staff, the Road Accident Fund, could be dangerously low. But an opportunity has actually presented itself that we can rescue the situation. Can we prioritize the victims? For our success should not be about the amount of money that we've paid out. We must first struggle to save the lives and look at the amount of money that we pay. And when we pay, can we pay fairly and not take advantage of our people? From me to you, my name is Isaac Lesole. I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you, Mr. Nel, for your insights. Thank you very much for spending the time and honoring us again. Thank you for you've picked up this struggle on the basis of facts. You've won some battles, you've lost some battles, and that's how it is. This guy has not paid me any money. I have not asked him to pay me any money. He's not going around paying people money. I have heard that every time when people talk against the Road Accident Fund, there is always a belief that you are colluding or you are either working with the guys, and that is so unfortunate. Because those of us who are in the space, we do this thing not for the Road Accident Fund. This is what we do. It is important that we are respected for who we are and the work that we put in what we're doing. So my friend, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for honoring us today. I hope I'll see you again next time.
So Isaac, thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Peace and light. We're out.
Yo, en het rijm.